Let's admit it, everyone has been heartbroken at least once in their life. So would you delete the memory of a person who broke your heart? This movie will make you think about that question. Welcome back, guys, it's Motion Recaps again, and today we're covering the 2004 drama Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Much to his surprise, Joel Barish is shocked to discover that the love of his life, Clementine, has had him erased from her memory. To pay her back, Joel decides to do the same. However, he realizes how much she means to him and that his life is empty without her. Joel then decides to stop the procedure, but he's unable to do so. The only thing he can do now is to try and save the memory of Clementine from despairing into oblivion. Before we begin, feel free to subscribe to our channel and don't forget to like this video. Make sure you remain with us until the end to find out how great the story is. It helps our great community to grow and enable us to strive for the highest quality content. So without further ado, let's start. Joel Barish wakes up on Valentine's morning. Instead of going to work, he decides to take a train to Montauk. He goes to a beach, and while he walks around, lost in his thoughts, he sees he's not alone. A woman is walking there watching the horizon. Later, Joel sees her in a cafe, and then he also sees her at a train station. She approaches him on the train, and the two of them have a nice and friendly talk. The woman's name is Clementine, and she has a feeling that she knows Joel from before. They got off the train, and Joel offers Clementine a ride home. She accepts, and when Joel drops her off, she invites him for a drink. They get close and intimate. After a slow buildup, Joel leaves and Clementine gives him her number. He immediately calls her when he gets home, and they set up a date for tomorrow night. The next night, they visit a frozen lake. There, they have a lot of fun sharing special and intimate moments. Joel drives Clementine to her house, and she asks him if she can sleep at his place. Joel tells her she can, and she rushes to get her toothbrush. Someone knocks on Joel's car window. A man named Patrick asks him if he needs any help. Joel gets confused by this question, and after telling him that everything is alright, Patrick goes away. And then we can see Joel crying as he's coming back home. He gets out of the car and a white van is following him. Joel goes to his apartment and he gets into his pajamas. He takes a sleeping pill and he falls asleep immediately. Patrick goes out of the van with a man called Stan. They take a bunch of their equipment. They enter Joel's apartment and we get a flashback sequence. Joel is at his friend's house and he's ranting about Clementine. He tells them how he bought a necklace for Clementine, but when he got to her workplace to give it to her, he found out that she has a boyfriend and it's Patrick. Joel also tells his friend that Clementine acted like she doesn't know him. His friend gives him a card that says that Clementine erased Joel from memory. Joel goes to visit a clinic where Clementine went. There, a woman named Mary accompanies Joel to Dr. Mirzwak, who explains to him that Clementine came here for a medical procedure, hoping to forget Joel completely. Joel tells the doctor that he wants to forget Clementine, and the doctor tells him to go home and collect everything that reminds him of her. He explains to Joel that they will use those objects to create a map of memories for erasing, and after that his men will come by night to erase everything while Joel sleeps. Joel does exactly what the doctor told him, and the next day he brings everything that reminds him of Clementine. Stan and the doctor put Joel in the machine, and they proceed to create a map of memories. Then we are back to our present, and Joel is lying on his bed linked to a machine. Stan is monitoring everything while Patrick acts unprofessionally. Joel then dreams about the night he and Clementine broke up. She came back drunk at 3 a.m. and she wrecked his car. They begin to argue and the situation soon escalates when Joel tells her that she's probably cheating on him. They begin to fight and Clementine leaves. Joel goes after her, yelling at her that she erased him from his memories. Clementine disappears and Joel then can hear the voices of Stan and Patrick. In reality, the two of them get comfy in Joel's house. Stan calls Mary to come over and then Patrick talks about his girlfriend. He even tells Stan how he stole her one pair of panties. That information freaks Stan out and he continues to monitor Joel's brain activity. Joel and Clementine are having dinner and Joel hears Stan's and Patrick's voices again. He begins to look for them but in vain. And then we can see him on a walk with Clementine and she tells him that she wants a child. Joel tells her that she's not mature and responsible enough for that. Once again, the situation escalates and they begin to fight. Mary arrives and she grabs a drink from Joel's cupboard. She completely ignores Patrick, who acts really awkward. It's early morning and Clementine is talking to Joel about how he needs to share more things with her. Even if they're in a relationship, he's still quiet, and he rarely tells her what's bothering him. Instead, he writes that in his journal. Suddenly, they're in a Chinese restaurant, and Joel is thinking about how they are getting colder and colder. He knows that their love is slowly withering, yet he doesn't know what to do. And then he goes to the library to visit Clementine. He finds her talking with her new boyfriend, and when Joel tries to see his face, he can't. He's then transported to another memory where Clementine dyed her hair in the orange color and both of them are happy. Patrick calls his girlfriend and he finds out that she's really upset over something. He tells her that he will come over and he asks Stan if he can go. Stan allows him, knowing that he will stay alone with Mary. The two of them then start blazing. Patrick goes to his girlfriend's apartment, and yes, it's Clementine. He acts all care and loving, but Clementine is upset over something. It's like she knows what she did and what Joel is doing. She asks him to go to Montauk with her, and he gladly accepts. And then he calls Stan, who is dancing with Mary, and he asks him if he can go. Stan allows him. Patrick quickly takes a paper from Joel's journal, and he prepares a speech for Clementine, and he also gives her a gift that Joel bought for her. Clementine is stunned when she sees a necklace. Patrick is a real manipulator. Joel is under a blanket with Clementine, and she tells him a story when she was a child. She thought that she was really ugly. Joel reminds her that she's beautiful, and then he realizes how much he loves Clementine and he wants to keep memories of her. He regretted the decision of asking the doctor to erase it. They're transported to a frozen lake, and Joel admits to Clementine that he doesn't want to forget her and that he still loves her. Clementine then disappears, and Joel screams from his lungs that he wants to stop. He hears Clementine, and after he finds her, they begin to run. They go through a lot of places, and everything around them is slowly fading. They end up in a doctor's office, and Joel asks the doctor to stop the procedure. He tells Joel that he can, and Joel finds out that Clementine is missing. In the real world, Patrick is with her on the frozen lake, and he quotes Joel's words. Clementine figures out that something is wrong, and she immediately gets up and gets away from him. Joel is walking with Clementine through the woods, and after the small stop, he tells her that he needs to wake up so he can save the memories of her. He then gives his best to do so, but he can only open his eyes for a brief moment. In the next sequence, Clementine tells Joel to hide her in the memories where she doesn't belong. They won't find her there. Joel then takes her to memories of where he was a child. Stan notices that something isn't right, and he immediately goes to his computer. There he finds out that Joel managed to get off from the dream app they created for him. He immediately calls the doctor to come and help him, and the doctor doesn't wait a second. He arrives and he immediately begins to chart the course of Joel's dreams. Joel is bathing in the sink together with Clementine, and he's truly happy because he managed to save her, but suddenly she disappears into the water. The doctor managed to fix the situation. Joel opens his eyes and they're full of tears. However, Joel finds her in the next memory. They're in a drive-in theater and they're having fun dubbing a movie. However, everything begins to disappear and Joel runs with her. Clementine tells him to hide her in his embarrassing memories. Joel listens to her and they disappear. Stan informs the doctor that Joel got off the course again, and the doctor gets back to fix the situation. Joel and Clementine are in a really embarrassing memory as Joel is masturbating to his drawings, and for things to be worse, his mother sees him. And then Joel guides her to a memory where he was a child and bullies forced him to smash a bird with a hammer. Clementine is there as a child too, and she takes him away from the bullies. They get teleported to the snowy beach and they begin to play in the snow, but Clementine disappears. Stan goes out for a little air and Mary uses that chance to kiss the doctor. At that time, the doctor's wife arrives and she sees her husband together with Mary. The doctor and Mary go outside to try to reason with her, but she drives away in anger. The doctor then tells Mary that this happened once before and that she got her memory erased because of an affair with the doctor. Joel is with Clementine in the bookstore. It's one of the earliest memories of her. The conversation goes smoothly. However, Clementine has a breakdown and she tells Joel that she's not plaything for men. Her every ex expected her to fix his life and no one cared for her life. And then Joel appears in his memory where he met Clementine for the first time. She approached him while he was sitting alone, away from the others. After a whole day of talking, they decide to break into the beautiful house at the beach. They explore a little, but the dream sequence slowly fades, and Joel says his last goodbye to Clementine. Before she disappears, she whispers the word Montauk to him. Stan and the doctor take off the equipment from Joel, and they get out. Joel wakes up, and we're back at the beginning of the movie. Joel meets Clementine again, and now he's waiting for her outside her house. On the way out, she finds a cassette tape and a letter, and in the car she reads the letter. It's from the doctor's wife. She explained what happened, and she sent a cassette tape to every person who had their memory erased. On the cassette is their interview in which they talked about who and why they want to forget. Clementine puts the cassette in the player, and she and Joel get surprised when they hear her saying horrible things about Joel. Both of them are confused because they remember nothing, and Joel tells her to get out of his car. Clementine gets back to her house, and Patrick is there waiting for her. She tells him to go away and decides to go back to Joel. She finds him in his apartment listening to all the bad things he said about her. He gives her a drawing of her, which he found, and then they talk about everything. Even so, they cannot understand what happened. Clementine doesn't know what to think, and she gets out of his apartment, but Joel follows her. He tells Clementine that he can't think of anything he doesn't like about her. Clementine tells him that he will find out that she's not perfect, but Joel doesn't care about that. He knows how much he loves her. The movie ends as the two of them happily run through a snowy beach. And there you go. That's our video for today. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and hit the bell icon as well so you'd be notified if we have a new story for you. And also, after the video, please check out this videos we've attached for you. See you next time.